Hi, Jim. Thanks for taking time to talk to us today.
Good morning from Alaska.
What's your weather like up there?
Not the best. Yesterday was gorgeous. You know those fall days when they're clear and crisp and you have all the scents of the fall. The berries are fermented and the leaves are on the ground. I love those days. I absolutely love them. They're great for taking a walk. But
Yeah, it's beautiful.
today's rainy.
About 85 here in Phoenix. It
Yeah,
is what it is.
I don't want to hear that.
You know, you're one of my favorite Alaskans in relationship to knowing how the government works. And you grew up in the capital, is that correct?
Yeah, you used to say you could take the boy out of Juneau, but you can't take the Juneau out of the boy.
Yeah, I've always loved how you understand policy and constitutions, and you're amazing.
I started as a poli-sci major
Oh,
at,
did you?
at Western State of Colorado. So kind of thought that's, the direction I would go, but God got a hold of me.
I'm learning how people have made major life transitions, sort of like from plan A, then to plan B, then to plan C. And when you were, so let's say, getting out of high school, what was kind of plan A?
Yeah, I went to Western State of Colorado because I love to ski, downhill ski. You can't go to the university for downhill ski. I put these components into the machine that the advisor at the high school had, and it came up that the best fit for me was Western State of Colorado in Gunnison, Colorado, 30 minutes from Crested Butte. I bought a season pass for $100 to one of the best resorts in Colorado, and
Nice.
skied about 3 or 4 times. I always say my GPA, my skiing went uphill, but my GPA went downhill.
Yeah, I understand. And then how many years were you there?
Just one.
Did you enjoy it? Was it like a good part of life?
To some things, the skiing was great, classes were fine. The environment in the dorm was terrible, and I do it from the perspective of what you and I experienced later. Marvelous dorm life and everything. Dorm life in the 70s in Colorado was not right. I would never send my child to that environment back then. I think there's some good things now, and there was some spiritual life that was trying to connect with me, but I wasn't really very receptive to that. But I saw things and experienced things. My roommate OD'd and had to go to the hospital, and it was a frightful thing. It not reflective necessarily of the campus, but of the time.
Well, you got from that part of your life curve, you started another.
Yeah. Yeah, I went back first to Seattle with my grandfather's tugboat, and then back to Juneau, and just let God begin speaking to my life, just surrender to what God had for me, and started growing there. And my pastor, he knew that I had applied to Northwest, but I was on a paint job and it wasn't quite done. He came out and pulled me off the ladder, took me home to pack a few things. I had my paint clothes on, took me to the airport. I bought the ticket, flew to Northwest, flew to Seattle.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And then you were at Northwest how many years?
4 years. Yeah.
And preparation for?
Well, preparation for you to follow my footsteps. That's what I was doing. I told your son that the other day. I said, well, I was just paving the way for your dad to do well,
Yeah, thank you.
But pastoral ministry, and also had history and counseling minors. So I had a few extra credits.
Good.
So I did very well. I really enjoyed my time at Northwest. It was my friends, as you well know, they're still friends today, and I can call them and pick up where we left off. I love that.
That's fabulous. Then let's say your pastoral ministry was the next curve. How did you decide to do that? And how did it go? What emotions did you feel, etc.?
Yeah, there were several emotions because I thought I had a pretty good resume and that I would do well, but I wanted to go to Alaska. And the only interviews I was getting was like Oregon and Washington. But then I'd make like the final cut, and then I was still single. I was not engaged, and I was not going to play my hand until I was engaged. And that didn't happen until the day before I left school. So I had to wait till the water warmed up because you were thrown in the lake, as you remember. So I was navigating all that, and the interviews, I would find out from somebody else that was interviewed that they got the job and I didn't. And my pastor told me, call Fairbanks. I called him. The secretary said, "What do you want to talk to the pastor about?" She was a good gatekeeper. And I told her, "I understand you have a job opening." And she said, "Well, we have one youth pastor. We don't want another." Well, what she didn't know, she didn't like the youth pastor. And she did not know that he was getting ready to resign. My pastor, McNevin, was good friends with the pastor in Fairbanks, and he knew, but they just hadn't announced it yet. So he called me a second time. "How come you haven't gotten a hold of Hughes?" I said, "Well, I couldn't get by the gatekeeper." No. So he called, and Pastor Hughes called me, and I had interned at North Pole, so I knew the lay of the land. I knew the former youth pastor at Fairbanks because of my work at the North Pole Church. So it worked out well. It wasn't exactly what I was looking for because they wanted me to intern again. I'd already interned. I didn't want to do that. But I think, again, I wasn't engaged. And I think they wanted a married youth pastor. They didn't want a single one. So I think it was his way of kind of weeding me out, maybe. If it didn't work, he could pull the lever and say didn't work. But I knew that if I got there and did a good job, they'd take care of me. So I felt like, okay, this could be good or bad, but I don't have any security. That's what I really didn't have. I had another internship, but I knew that once I got there, got my feet wet, it would go okay. But I needed to know that I had a job because now I got engaged. And so I would be taking my wife there, but there were a lot of uncertainty for the first 6 months as I interned again on an intern salary, trying to get married. So that was my angst. That was my maybe a little bit of anxiety, but somehow I knew, God's going to take care of me. I didn't fret.
It's interesting that starting something new comes with a huge milieu of emotions. And most people, if they can't handle the threat or the nervousness of starting something new, they just stay put the rest of their lives, even though it's not rewarding anymore. It's not fulfilling.
Yeah, but I would just respond to that too, because it really is not my nature to worry or have anxiety. I'm coming out. I didn't have a debt load to really speak of because I was an Alaska resident, so I had the Alaska student loan program, and so I knew I wanted to come back in the state. My anxiety, if I had any, was just how am I going to pay for a wedding and get married and have. There was a lot still up in the air until we got married in October, so I didn't get a full salary till about then. I think just before I left for my wedding, they put me on full time. And so was there anxiety and stuff? Yeah, but it didn't manifest itself. I didn't wear it on my sleeve. I was very comfortable understanding that God's got this. So then I spent 3 good years there and had a wonderful relationship. The transition was a little difficult, and it was kind of weird because your dad was involved in wanting me to go to Healy, and the pastor called and said, "I want you to fill in for me." So I told your dad, "I'm just going to fill in." He said, "No, you're trying out." And
well, you did fantastic there.
When your dad said that, you didn't argue. I didn't argue with your dad.
That's funny.
So because he was my bishop, and so.
And how long did you pastor in Healy?
4 years. Completed 4 years. Had our first child there. Transition out of there was it was a little hard. I liked it. It wasn't the best place to wife and kids and stuff for my wife, but a little trying. But she did well, and I married up. I really did. And I knew this when I was looking for somebody. I had to marry somebody that would not call home when it was 50 below and say, "Mom, I made a mistake."
Yeah, because that could be every day in Healy.
Yeah, and the wind blows or Fairbanks. But
right.
I knew that Renee's attitude was the kind of sustainable attitude for Alaska. It was not about the weather. It was not about the location. It was about internal confidence in God. And she had that. And that's what made most attractive to me.
Praise God. Following that, then you pastored again, I think, in Kenai area.
Yeah, Soldotna. Yeah. For 25 years, just shy of 25 years.
So that's like a major part of life, 25 years. How did it feel to decide, I need to do something new?
You set the benchmark a lot higher than that. And so did our good friend Steve Brown with 30 plus years in Kenai. But here's the thing. I didn't know how nice Soldotna was. And it was a burnt up church. It was extremely dysfunctional, a heavy debt. I didn't know that. Nobody told me the debt was not on the books.
I thought you wouldn't go if they told you.
Well, and it was one of the executive officers called me about 3 months in and said, "Okay, moratorium on your loan is over." I'm going, "What loan?" It's not on the books because they hadn't been paying it. There
Oh,
was there was some relief given, so it wasn't on the books.
amazing.
Boy, do your homework. But if I'd have done my homework, I might not have gone to one of the best places to live in the state of Alaska.
It's
So
interesting to me that people think your next curve will be easier right away, but often it takes several years for that curve to develop into something beautiful.
you have to have a long-term vision and the sense that God will take care of you. I had a total confidence. I don't even know why that was built in, but early on I decided that, all right, God's getting me ready for whatever he has ready for me. And that put a confidence. I never had an ulcer. Never. There's a book called Why Zebras Don't Have Ulcers. What a lousy,
I'd never heard of it.
but they don't. In spite of having lions and hyenas and stuff around, they don't have anxiety. People have anxiety, and people
Huh.
get ulcers. It, but Jesus said to us that you don't worry, and your Father knows. For some reason, I caught that early on, and I had anxiety. I think every pastor does. I know some of the things that you went through. I called you on the day that was tumultuous. We were still in Healy, and Muldoon had an incident on Sunday morning. So I remember that phone call very well, Kent. Monday morning,
Thank you for the call.
yeah, you weren't talking to me. I said, Kent, what are you doing? What are you watching? You were watching the news, and it was on the news when I called, and that was traumatic. And those kind of things happen to us as pastors, but we live on a different plane. We don't live on the same earthly plane that others do, where anxiety, worry, and ulcers overwhelm our physical bodies. It's different. It's miraculous.
Yeah, it's like a divine strength.
Yeah, I can't live without it.
Yeah, me too. So then a big change, and at least from my distant view, is you decided to go from pastoring into a state job,
Yeah.
which had pastoral leanings like chaplaincy and a correction ministry. But what was it like to leave the autonomy of setting your own schedule, working
Yeah.
as you saw fit, writing sermons when it was good for you, to working at the state of Alaska?
Well, you pegged it very well because you're not in charge. When you're in the pastoral role, you're the senior pastor, you have some staff and stuff. Your schedule's a little bit your own. But when you go to bureaucracy, there's policy and procedure that is very cumbersome. And there's chain of command, and especially in DOC, a little bit like the military, there's uniforms and things, but you have to run by policy and procedure. So the transitioning out, I didn't see it coming. And yet as you know, I once lived with the person that started the modern chaplaincy program in Alaska. Pastor Lisey was my pastor. I lived with him in the 7th grade because of my mom's medical issues. So I had a little history, and he had stayed connected, and I had my card. I did volunteer work, but that was not on my radar at all. And I was floating my resume. I felt like God was saying, okay, you've raised your kids in Soldotna, and the church is in a good place. And I felt like a release was coming. I really did. I felt like, okay, but I didn't have a directive. And then the Department of Corrections came calling. They actually called our superintendent, and he knew that my resume was out there. I was also executive presbyter, so I think he felt like I got to keep him in the state. All the opportunities were coming out of state, with one exception that I felt like was not a good fit for us. So an Anchorage church. So I felt like when they called, it was out of the blue. It wasn't. They said, we want to see your resume. So I said, okay, you can see the resume. That's not threatening to see a resume. Big deal. Send them a resume. Then the call comes, we want to set up an interview. So I made a cut. But my friends were also made the cut. That's the thing that was intriguing. My friends were also being interviewed. Okay, how's this going to go? My hunting partner that you know well. And so we both made I think it was down to 3 people. And I got the job offer.
I kind of build a lot about what I'm doing now in this second curve coaching, about the faith to leave the known, to embrace the unknown. Yeah. How much of this was unknown to you that you stepped into?
Most all of it. But what was known to me is the confidence of God, that God had my future in mind, and that was always getting me ready for whatever he had ready for me. That's kind of my mantra. He's always getting you ready for what he already has ready for you. And so this job kept me in the state of Alaska, didn't move me too far from the Kenai Dang. No, I did not know what it entailed, really. I told them the question was, what will we get from hiring you? And boy, things popped in my head that I'd never said before. But I think that came out of God preparing. And I just have a real sense of confidence that God has my back, has my future, has my
Good.
current state, and I don't worry about it. I really don't worry. Somebody said, well, that's just human confidence. And I think, no, it isn't. I don't suffer from any ailments from anxiety or um, I really don't. So when we started navigating this, it's kind of funny. When I did get into it, there was so much policy, procedure, bureaucracy. My office manager knew everything. She had it all down and she knew everything. And I called my wife 2 weeks into the job and said, they don't need me here. I should come home. And I remember what she said, there's nothing to come home to. We haven't sold our house yet, but the job was gone. And she was there, but the job was gone. And we were separated on weekdays during the week. And then weekends, I was always back home to Soldada till we
Yeah.
transitioned.
I'm finding that some people's second curve, or it's really the next curve, but I call it second curve because that's what it's identified in the literature. I'm finding that there's often a financial component to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was to this in that I'll tell you that the salary was an increase. And then here's what's really cool too, working for the state, is that I don't have to submit anything to the board to get them to do salary review. Remember how hard it was? You guys need to do salary review. Okay, we'll think about it. Months would go by. Months would go. Years would go by. In the first years, they would just never do it. And now they're automatic, and it's wonderful.
That's
Automatic,
good. Plus,
you know,
in our movement, there's no retirement plan.
no,
But I think
it
the
has
state
to
of
be
Alaska has the
self-initiated. Yeah. So there was something else that you made mention I was going to go to, things I didn't know that, well, I know what it is. The health insurance that we had as self-employed ministers was terrible and very expensive. And I didn't know my wife was going to be dealing with kidney cancer, and all of that was taken care of.
Thank you, God. I'll talk to your wife about how God's given her this worldwide ministry that's beyond imagination.
Yeah, can I give her
Yeah, right now. Give us a
that
review.
that will be remarkable. If you ask any questions about me, I want to do a rebuttal. But because she does have some different perspectives, but we never saw this coming. We had this guy reach out to us and wanted prayer because he wanted to change from being a music pastor to evangelism. And she did a little evangelism video and sent it to him. He took it out to a village, put it on a big sheet, and 100 people get saved. So that's how it started. And now the guy will have 50,000 people come to his crusades in Pakistan. So that was 14 years ago.
Yeah, I've
So
seen a
anyway,
picture of her preaching to those 50,000 people.
I know. She lets me go with and do some of the songs. I do like 5,000 to 6,000. She
Yeah,
does the 30,000 or so. But God is doing amazing work. So, but here again, here's what you don't know all the things that God has for you. And when you take those curves and stuff, you can't see around. That's the whole thing why we're doing this.
that's good.
We can't see around the curve. We can be warned it's coming, but what other details do you have? Because you can't see that. You can't really map out that much of your future other than to say, God's getting me ready for whatever he has ready for me. And then
Right.
put your head on your pillow.
I specifically work toward helping Christian leaders make curves because I don't know how you make these life curve changes, life trajectory changes, if you don't know the Lord. If you don't have confidence in God, it's like jumping out of an airplane and hoping your parachute opens. Whereas with our faith, we know that all things work together for good to them who love God and are the called according to his purpose.
Well, and everybody over me on top, or I'm on the 18th floor of the Atwood building. It's a 19th floor building. The people right under me are the lieutenant governor, the governor's office, and his chief officers. What's their life expectancy at their job? 4 years. 4 years.
Right.
They take those jobs already knowing 4 years and I'm done. And that's why sometimes they resign early because something else popped up. And in DOC, a lot of times they'll take the job, but they'll take it as in an acting role because they don't know what the future is going to hold. Other than 4 years, everything changes unless the governor gets reelected and wants to retain you. So those people especially in the political arena, their jobs, they can't predict what's coming around the corner very well. And
Right.
I would say this, I would say, like for the president, for your aides, man, how attractive does a godly person look when you're looking to hire somebody because they have a great sense of comfort in serving the Lord. And it's just amazing. So all we do in not knowing that curve, all I do, Galatians 5:25 is my mantra, keep in step with the Spirit of God.
Good.
Keep in step. I can't see around the corner, but I can take one step. I can take two steps. And sometimes you pick up your pace, you see, down the road, but other times you can't. And you just be consistent in picking up your steps, moving to the next level, and let God be God.
One thing that's interesting to me is my second curve was planned. I pastored 40 years at MCA Church. Toward the end, I started a PhD program because I wanted to do something different. And I promised between 1.5 to 3 years of this transition. And I left around a year and a half into that. But like your wife's second curve of this huge ministry overseas, in a sense, it wasn't planned. It kind of got invited, and you say showing a video on a sheet, and then other people, it's motivated by finances. Health is a big one. I had to do something new because I didn't have the strength to do whatever it is they were doing. And yet, in the end, followers of Jesus know that there's the unseen hand of God at work behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
When you made
we're just the clay pots.
Right. Your big shifts, what happened? Did your friends support you? Did you feel like, hey, I'm in this all alone?
How did you know?
How did you feel?
How did you know to ask that question? I've thought about this
Because
a lot.
I've experienced it myself.
Well, and I've experienced it, and you were there. I remember your words after a shift came in our leadership role, in my leadership role with the Assemblies of God in Alaska. So you were in the back, and you were around some young guys, and made a remark that I haven't forgotten. Thank you. It was comforting to me. But the transition happens when you take on something like go from pastoral ministry. When you leave the traditional pastoral ministry role, others perceive you're bailing out. And I never once felt that way, but I did feel about other people, they went and sold cars. And because of my role in the executive, what I did, I sometimes had to help them move towards selling cars because it wasn't a good fit. And so I saw that, and I'm connected to one of them very, very closely there. If I said the name, you would recall. And I have a lot of history with him, and he's done well. And but when they move from that pastoral role, their colleagues feel like you bailed on us, or you're leaving us, the fraternity. You're leaving the fraternity,
Right.
and I didn't.
And you're not as spiritual.
Yeah, and I didn't personally take that on, but I certainly thought about it for others when I saw it happen to them. And I'm sure you have a sense that we've both seen some of our colleagues that transitioned out, and pastoring's not for everybody.
Right.
But it definitely was for me. My track record was good. I had no regrets. But I will tell you that the perception of you when you leave the traditional role of pastoring and go to a chaplaincy role, even though my church exploded to 5,000, not all of them were believers, but they were all available to attend. My field was 5,000 inmates and up to 3,000 volunteers, 3,700 volunteers at one time. Not all active, but on paper. So my working group, my staff was that number.
Yeah, more than the people who lived in Soldotna.
Not quite, but yeah, I think right in Salt City limits about 5,500.
Okay.
But it serviced a bigger area. But anyway, it's kind of funny the perception they had. And so it's probably one of the reasons why I'm not involved in leadership is a perception is that you left the fraternity and bailed on us, whether that be good or bad. But you know what? I'm not living with any regrets. I've done really well. And here's the thing in the second curve I didn't see coming is the doors that opened up to it. I did not see everything else coming. So, but it was all in my wheelhouse. And people have said that before. Man, that's a good fit for you, networking. I didn't realize my networking skills that I would have to use in this role.
I think second curves also have side blessings, so to speak. And one of them for me, in my view of you, is the governor's prayer breakfast. I think that sitting in a previous ministry, maybe even in Soldotna, you probably never dreamed I'll be leading the governor's prayer breakfast committee.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest. And the bylaws for the governor's prayer breakfast committee says that you cannot be a pastor and be on the board because they didn't want one church owning it, even though that's exactly what happened.
I do.
And your involvement in that it was so good to work with you.
Yeah. Hey, let's take a quick side road here.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting Vody Bachman there to speak. And he
Oh,
recently passed. And what
yeah,
was your experience with this wonderful preacher?
man. That's funny. I've been really thinking about that lately. He died too young, and he was incredible. He did the Dash sermon between Good Friday and Easter. The Dash, what happened on Saturday, man, and
Hmm.
ministered also to college kids so well. He also was very sure of himself on his theology, and I challenged him a little bit on. I made a mistake. I should not have even entered into the debate on hyper Calvinism. Who or what camp goes to hyper Calvinism, or my terminology of it was totally different than his. And man, I found out I am not a debater on hyper Calvinism or pious
Right.
Calvinism or anything along that line. And but he was gracious, and boy did he minister well. The other thing my other takeaway, you may have seen it on Facebook. I posted a picture of his fist, and I have a big hand,
Yeah.
and and he was an, I think it's MMA over 50 Brazilian jiu-jitsu,
Oh,
world champion Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And when you see his fist next to mine, whoa, if you ever go down a dark alley, you wanted Vody Bachman. He also played football at Rice.
Oh,
And
did he?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and Rice
I
is,
really liked when he came to our pastor's luncheon and someone said, we're working toward racial diversity and unity. And as an African American, what do you think? And I don't remember the detail of the question, but his answer was, first of all, I'm not an African American. I'm an American.
yeah.
And it just set the stage for like everybody has these little categories and he just blew the categories out of the water.
Well, that's the thing about Vody that I found out too, is that he's 2 steps ahead of you. He's further down the tracks on whatever your question was. Kind of like Charlie Kirk. He could
Hmm.
think through your processing. He had spent some time processing those kinds of questions that other people don't think about. Vody I remember this too. They adopted a bunch of children. I don't know if you knew that too.
I
And he told about the process of the last one, and it was it was just a God thing. It looked like there's no way this can happen. It's a mess. It's a disaster. And boom, God just sovereignly opened the door, and him and his wife were able to do. They might have been siblings, the last two or something. I can't recall. But when you sat there and you listened, you never know another person's journey. You don't know what else that they go on. And they went through second curves a lot in their life, transitioning out of the US to Africa, transitioning back to Florida, transitioning with their children, the size of their family, all those kind of things. You talk about a guy that could serpentine from
right.
a distance. I perceive that Vody Bachman could serpentine. He could do a Le Mans race for 24 hours in a car that's got to be able to turn left and right. And I think that makes for a great solid believer, is somebody that can say, okay, Lord, I will serpentine on your behalf and we will go where you say we will go.
It's good. Do you have a favorite person who's made a total life change, transformation? Maybe one of your athlete friends or a professional, someone who was headed in one direction and said, that's been successful, gone fabulous. Now I'm going to go a new direction.
Yeah. And 3 of them come to mind, but the first one would be McNevin, because he loved to fly, and he was at the Air Force Academy. He was a brilliant mind.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He was in the desert one day, and uh, he didn't like snakes because he was an Alaskan. But I think he was at Edwards Air Force Base or something. But he'd gone to the academy in Colorado Springs, and a snake rattled when he's walking in the
Oh,
desert,
really?
and it made him jump. And God says, "I'm going to jump. We're going to take a jump, and you're going to jump to a different." And that's why he
Hmm.
went to Bethany College. Dick
Oh,
Tilth was his roommate. But so he made a huge transition. The cool thing is he got to continue flying, which he absolutely loved. I flew with him a few times. He died in a plane wreck, but
Right.
he died doing what he loved doing. And I love that man. He liked to stir the pot. And I think he and your dad in their leadership roles, McNevin loved to stir the pot.
He
And
did.
so he could then fix it. He was that kind of person. Complex, read Bonhoeffer and his Greek Bible. They were always by his bedside. I hunted with him at a hunting camp and stayed with him a few times. And so to watch him navigate, to come back to Juneau, to people that he knew well, because he was raised there. He knew the people that didn't like him. He knew the complexity of some of the people that he had been raised with that didn't want him to be their pastor, but the majority did. He could navigate that, and then he knew where to take the church down the road. So I
Right.
really like that. He had vision. Hughes was a wonderful shepherd, really good shepherd care person. And so he filled that role. If McNevin filled the vision part, it was Hughes that filled the shepherd concept. I have a shepherd,
Oh, I see it back there.
and I always thought that's my Pastor Hughes shepherd. He was just really good that way. Other things, maybe not so good, but he could procrastinate with the best of them.
Yeah. It's interesting that in the pastoral ministry, you're expected to be good at everything. But
Yeah,
like if you're a football player, you're supposed to be good at punting. You don't have to be good at everything on the team,
right,
but
right.
the weight on a pastor is huge.
Oh, it's totally different. And yeah, you have to, and I'm pretty good at, shifting and doing stuff and multitasking, maybe loaded with ADD, maybe that helps. But I can I can do multiple things at the same time, but maybe not any of them really good. If I was just an offensive lineman where I'm just a
Right.
short, stocky guy that never gets in the way of the quarterback and just blocks bigger guys because of my bulk, well, then I just do one job or a kicker or something like that. But pastoral ministry is not that way, and you have to be eclectic. You have to be a bit eclectic, and you have
Right.
to uh, shift quickly. Hughes was not a quick shifter, but he was
Right.
extremely loving. His wife was amazing, good Bible
Yeah.
teacher. Peretti was
Yeah.
also
Long-term stability.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
very much so. And then I interned with Peretti, and he was really good at putting me in positions and places and allowing me to ask questions and then follow through on them about, pastoral ministry. He was really good hands-on with coaching me when I interned with him. And then so started with McNevin, went to Peretti for internship, and then did another internship with Hughes. I think about his character in that second internship, which it was not in my wheel, not what I wanted to do, but it was just like him to do that, very much like him to do that. But also, he was the best friend I had in ministry. And like you and
Good.
Sheneman, it did shift a little bit later, but then it shifted back when he had Alzheimer's and he moved to be with us. It was a part of our church in Soldotna. He moved intentionally to be by us, buy a house and up, all the uproot from where he was. That's pretty amazing. And I look at that as one of the greatest accomplishments I had was to stay close to the pastor that launched me into ministry.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
When we'd go up and down the Kenai River, you would know where all the athletes had places. Did any of the athletes that you knew that had a place up and down the Kenai River, did any of them do well after their athletic career?
Yeah, especially the Denver kicker. I'm trying to think what his first name, Elam, the kicker with John Elway. Oh, why can't I remember his first name? But he wanted to go into apologetics, and I think he went on to Oxford later. But he landed
Wow.
south of Soldotna.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that in sports, your second curve is almost forced on you
Yeah,
by age 30, 35, maybe 40. And many of them drift and many of them excel. Similar, if you join the military at 20, at 45, you're retired. And
yeah.
many go on to a great new curve and others face challenges.
And therein lies if you started your career with especially like in football and stuff, if you had to say use steroids and drugs and stuff, and that just compounds that curve, it gets in the way of being able to navigate. John Elway went into car sales and then he bought the Broncos, if I remember correctly, but there's a lot that couldn't do those kind of things, and a lot of them. Tom Brady doesn't have to work. He does not have to work. Well, unless having gone through a recent divorce forces his hand. But he's part owner of the Raiders and he's in the booth. Tony Romo's a really good person in the booth. But some of
Right.
them make mistakes along the way. The former coach of the Raiders, I really liked listening to him on the radio because he could predict what teams were going to do all the time. But he got in trouble. He said the wrong things. He couldn't make the curve. He went off the
Right.
rails. And
Yeah, I have a talk I'm working on called Dangerous Curves Ahead.
man,
Sometimes those curves take us out.
yeah, and it may seem like the right thing to do at the time, but it's not. And so some of those guys, they don't do well. I don't know for sure.
One of the reasons I want to talk to you is you've done so well making curves yourself. However, you also have a ministry entirely, in a sense, helping people from being incarcerated to starting a whole new curve. In essence, you help hundreds and hundreds of people do new curves every week, every year. Do you have any stories? I know you can't give names, but do you have any stories of successful curves?
Well, let me take one that's unusual that's still in prison. But because he was the number one high maintenance inmate, he was $1 million inmate, $1 million a year to manage his incarceration.
Wow.
And we tried to send him to all other states. Indiana will take almost anybody. Texas has a big, no state, all 50 other states were sent his file, and all of them said, we don't have the resources to manage it. So we were stuck. He was in House 1 in Seward, which is our max. House 1 is the end of the road. He never had a roommate, had to be tied down all 4 limbs because he harmed himself and others too. About as ungodly and demonic as I can ever imagine. And every DOC person who ever went close to the 2 or 3 prisons that he was in, they know about this guy. And one day mental health says, we can't do anything. We're done. There's nothing we can do. And the lady said, unless chaplaincy would take him. And so we talked about it that, oh man, one guy could ruin our committee. I mean, he had a management team, but one guy could ruin our program. And we discussed it. We thought, well, let's take it to our inmates in the program. And so this is a residential faith program. It's got about 28 people in there. We said, we got this guy, and then some of the guys knew him and go, oh man, what a nightmare. But the thing that I remember, one inmate said, well, chaplain, either what we got works or it doesn't work. Let's take him on. And he flipped. In fact, later on, when he read the Gadarene story in Mark, he jumped out of his seat and said, that's me. That's my story. So he went from $1 million inmate, gave his heart to Christ. That's a 180. And that's what it
Amazing.
Happens. If it's not a 180, it won't work just to kind of go around a curve. You need a 180. And you need transformation. If a church or a movement, spiritual movement doesn't understand or seek to pursue transformation, how do they grow? How do they do anything? How does an inmate change if he doesn't have any spiritual transformation? A 180. So we did that. And here's the thing, he could not read or write. And if I told you the name, Kent, your history in Alaska, I know that name. And you would know it. And our good friend Donadio pastored in this kid's hometown.
Wow. Okay.
And so did Dale Crandall at one time. So we took him into our program. He gives his heart to Christ. One of the inmates was a school teacher that went off the rails. And we were wondering, how are we going to teach this guy to read or write? And the school teacher said, I'll volunteer. He said, yeah, but you got to be his roommate. I said, okay. So a guy who had never had a roommate that was basically a Gadarene had a roommate that could teach him to read or write. And not too long ago, he taught John Bevere's book, The Bait of Satan. Now, if you're offended by a guy that did murder and all these kind of things, don't go into chaplaincy. But if you understand the concept of being unoffendable, where measured grace is dispensed by your life, then chaplaincy might be for you. And it definitely was for this guy. He's had hiccups. We've had some problems. He said, sometimes with inmates, it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Sometimes it's 4 steps back. But we're not where we were 4 years ago with this guy.
Yeah.
And he did a transformation. And I can walk down the streets, especially if I walk down 4th Avenue with Chaplain Silliman. He's been at it for over 40 years, growing up about 50 years. And people will yell our names, mainly his name. And if they're on 4th Avenue, I'm a little suspect, but they'll yell. I remember hearing, Chaplain Silliman, it's working. It's working.
Good.
And people that we've helped take that curve, I use that particular one that I told you about because it's just nothing short of a miracle. Everyone at DOC knows, and I never saw this coming. I didn't know how many DOC employees he impacted. So I set up a new program just to take him when he graduated from our faith program, a residential program. I needed some place that was safe to put him. Didn't want to put him back in general pop. And so I developed this faith wing at the Palmer Correctional and sent him up there. I went up there on the day he arrived, and they staged me to talk to him. I see him down the hallway with a CO that's staging him, and the CO asked the question, "What are you doing here?" Because you went from house one, where you're the most difficult person to manage in all of DOC. Now you're in the medium at Palmer, where you get freedom and everything. And so he launched right into his testimony of what God had done for him. And the CO's just going, and I thought, slow him down, Lord. I want him to finish the story before he gets to me. So it was really cool, Ken,
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And yeah, so some people that we kind of specialize in is people whose first curve was very successful.
Yeah.
But there's also people whose first curves have been nothing short of miserable.
Yeah.
And to watch God start a brand new, therefore, if any man be in Christ, he's a new creation. To just see a whole new start. And it's throughout the scripture. You know, Paul was pretty rotten. David, we could fill in the blanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your favorite thing you've learned about you in your second curves?
I would say, I think you asked that question on a questionnaire that you sent me. Maybe I thought about it just a little bit, but I would say it's not just right now, but it's been an ongoing learning to trust the Holy Spirit that has, because the Spirit of God builds confidence in us. And a lot of times, like I'd do sermons and I would struggle over, I don't want to miss anything in my, is some theologian going to sit out there? Early in my career, a guy called me out in the middle of my sermon and said, "That's wrong," and it really, don't do that. Wait till after the service. And he was right. I missed it. I still remember the text, everything. It left a burn mark on me. I was a little, and I don't want to miss it, because I remember when I said it. Here's one of the godly women in the church. She's just going along everything, and this person has done a little more studies and verbalized, and so it took me a while to trust the Holy Spirit when I'm studying, when I'm looking, to trust the Spirit in me to lead me, anoint me. And so I've learned to do that better as I got older than when I was younger. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand. And the myth of my next curve will be easier because I have experience is only true if that experience is in trusting God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the next curve, I have their next curve, a friend that both of us have from Northwest University, his new curve is stage 4 colon cancer. And to just say, okay, it's not what I thought, but it's a new curve. It's changing the way I work. It's changing the way I live.
Yeah.
But to find God faithful in that kind of curve as well.
Very true. When you're young, you can't just dispense of gold dust everywhere you go. It's just not going to be that way. There's a learning curve, and trusting where God's going to take you and trusting that curve takes a while. Yeah. And so the confidence in myself and my ability for the Spirit to lead and guide me, it took a while to lean on the Holy Spirit and understand that's what God's doing in me. Trust that, rather than to have the anxiety or the worry of screwing up with a tech.
Yeah. Back at our school at Northwest, I took a degree in religion and philosophy, and Dr. Pope was our professor in philosophy.
I think I took the same class.
And in front of every test, he had us sing "Trust and Obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus." I thought, this is an old song, Pope. Come on. Now I realize he was saying that once you get out of here with all these degrees and all this study of Aristotle and Plato, it's going to come down to, can you trust God?
Yeah. He might have been the perfect professor to teach that and to sing that song. But when I was going through it, I thought he was the worst professor. My attitude toward him changed much later in life. That guy was pretty smart.
Yeah, I had the same thing experienced. Last question, Jim. What have you most learned about God recently?
Wow. It's ongoing. I think it goes a little bit back. It's ongoing. That confidence level in you is always ongoing. It's always moving. It's always growing. It's never going to stop. You're always going to be learning. And God's got, then the minute you think you got it all, you don't. And so even in my years, because I'm about to turn 69, and I know I will shift out of this role at some point. I'm gonna fade.
Yeah, a new curve is coming.
A new curve is coming. So we'll do this interview. I'm not going to put a date. When you work for the state, the last thing you do is you don't tell people what your gate date is.
I understand.
If you're inside DOC, you know what that gate date is, and everybody does, but not when you're an employee. But again, I'm learning that even at this stage of my life, God's got more. And here's what he dropped into my spirit just the other day. I was just thinking, I felt the Lord just tell me that there's still space in my head and my heart. And what I interpret that is that he's got more for me.
Praise God.
There's still space in my head and my heart. And it was the right thing to say to me because I knew it was true. The minute I heard it, I'm not ready to just walk away from ministry or just fade into the sunset, buy a sailboat. I couldn't get my wife on it to save my life. So I watch a lot of sailboat videos of people doing the inside passage. And I'm, like you said, I'm a Southeasterner. So I think about that part of life. But then I get arrested by the thought that there's still room in my head and my heart for God to do things.
Thank you, Jim.
Hey, it was fun. God bless.